Well, hello. Here we are. It's a lovely spring cold day and it's chapter 21 of the Curatage Ghost. It was pandemonium in the Curatage. Luka had been gone for a couple of hours. Judy was beside herself with worry. Sir Max was upset on several different levels, not least that he'd missed his, well, to him, beloved Katherine. The vicar was in a stew because he was out of his depth and forced to acknowledge that things he did not believe in were obviously happening. Grandad was very upset too. He liked solutions. He liked to be right. He liked to be in control. And here, there was no solution. He had thought Luka would reappear quickly and had been wrong, and the situation was out of control. The girls, after initially being relatively sanguine, were getting more and more worked up too. Yaya was blaming herself because of the water pistol, and Esme could not get the image of Luka disappearing out of her mind. Amelie was wondering if it was her fault for bringing the vicar and stirring things up. "I think we should call the police," said Judy, as that seemed the right thing to do. Grandad was less sure. What are we going to say? I mean, it's all so unbelievable. Unbelievable or not, Luka has disappeared. He is missing. The police deal with missing persons. We have to do something. Everyone sort of agreed, while deep down knowing that this was just going through the motions. This was not a solution. It might even make it worse. But there were no obvious alternatives. Sir Max felt guilty. He was the primary ghost. His haunting had set off this train of events. Without him, the boy would be safe. He half wanted to become a ghost again, as he thought he then might be able to help a bit more. But he didn't know how. The vicar was quite clear in his own mind that Sir Max was an unnatural phenomenon, and that he should be exorcised and sent back to the spirit world forthwith. He had seen an exorcism as a young priest, but he had always believed it was more for show than really casting out demons. Now, he was not so sure. After another hour, a policewoman arrived. She was very sympathetic, while giving the clear impression that she thought they were all balmy. She spent a long time shining her torch into the space where Luka had last been seen. In her own mind, she was convinced that Luka was playing tricks and would reappear in a few hours. The vicar went home and rang the bishop. They then both turned up on the doorstep saying they were going to exorcise Sir Max. It transpired that Sir Max was not keen on being cast into the fiery pit, so he locked himself in the outside loo. Bye. The policewoman left promising she would be back tomorrow. The vicar and bishop eventually despaired of tempting Sir Max out of the toilet, mumbled a few prayers and left, also saying they would be back. It was by now abundantly clear to all remaining that if anyone were to save Luka, it had to be Luka himself. This was, of course, a very worrying thought. Luka himself had been thinking, yes, he had. What he thought was that if there was some sort of time tunnel, or like in physics, a wormhole, it began in the Curatage. He could see from the window high up in the keep that even in what he had worked out from Sir Max was about 1530, there was a house where the Curatage would be. So if they could get there, a big if, they might be able to find an entrance and get back. Well, it was a plan, and would you have done any better? The alternative was to live his uncertain life in Tudor times. No sisters, parents, grandparents, friends or family. The only person he knew was an angry, beautiful young woman, so recently a ghost, whose other body was probably being executed around about now. Now that was a point. Could you have two bodies? Maybe if Katherine did really die now, this body crying next to him would die too. It was all getting very confusing, and he looked and as he looked down at the castle bailey, it was obvious something was happening there. Perhaps that is why so many people were there. He could just about make out that they seemed to be building a big bonfire with a large pole in the middle. A horrible memory crept back. He had an awful feeling of déjà vu. He knew, without a shadow of doubt, who was going to be burned. He could even remember how it felt. He tried not to scream, but he was shaking, and now he was very, very frightened. Katherine sensed the change in Luka, and in some strange way, it helped her. Keeping this lost young boy's spirits up took her mind off her own misery. She went to him and for the first time put her arm round him and showed him some tenderness. He turned to her. "They're building a fire, and I know who it's for. It is Sir Max." Then he was unsure of what to say next, remembering Katherine was not so keen. It was her turn to look a bit lost. She closed her eyes as if trying to straighten things out in her head. "Oh, Sir Max, he's about as much use as a wagon load of monkeys, but 'tis true that he loves me, and 'tis even more true that my scheming mother has me betrothed to him, without asking me, forsooth." Oh, she was shaking her head. "The truth is, I've only met him once, and he seemed to me a daft young fop, but his mad pursuit of the crown had me tarred with his brush. The castle constable found out from my loose-tongued mother that we were betrothed, and they imprisoned me, and I have no memory of what then happened." Luka had, but he knew that this was not the time to share it, as the forgetting seemed a sort of mercy. It seemed to him that he could not stop what was going to happen to Sir Max, who seemed safely ensconced in the 21st century anyway, but that perhaps, just perhaps, he could help both Katherine and himself. A germ of an idea was beginning to form. "Lady Katherine, we're stuck here, are we not?" She nodded. "We need to escape and get up to the house you were in when you met me. I think if we do that, we may be able to get back to my time." "Why would I wish to come with you?" Well, that seemed obvious to Luka. "Well, otherwise you will die." Katherine looked a bit startled. "Look, you were a ghost when we first met. How do you think you came to be a ghost?" Katherine tried to think. Everything was confused and mixed up in her head. What were memories? What were hallucinations? Why did she have flickering visions of being chained up in a small dark cupboard? Perhaps this boy was right. They both had to get out of here. If she was to run, she must take her most treasured possession, the Beaufort crown. She pulled out a piece of castle wall and took out a largish key. She unlocked the trunk and gasped in horror. It was empty! She need not have worried. Luka knew where it was. End of chapter 21 of the Curatage Ghost. Bye-bye!